What's up everyone, Jay here from Tap and Turn Gaming, coming at you today with a little video to talk about some spoilers for Oath of the Gatewatch, which is the next upcoming set from Magic. It's the next set in the Battle for Zendikar block, so a lot of you may have already seen some of these spoilers, so we are a little bit late to the party, but we did want to make a video about it, talk about some of the cards, and our thoughts on them from an EDH standpoint and stuff like that. So we're gonna kick it off here, and we're gonna talk about this right here, which is the new basic land type that's being introduced in Oath of the Gatewatch. So we have wastes. So what wastes are basically colorless basic lands. So the way that colorless mana works now, as far as I can understand from what I've read on multiple articles online, is that some specific cards in Oath of the Gatewatch, I'm not sure if they'll transition this into sets after Oath of the Gatewatch. It's possible they might, they may not. We'll have to wait and see. But basically this little symbol right here now represents pure colorless mana. So as you probably all well know before, on the mana cost of a card, if it had, just a number in a gray circle, that would represent colorless mana, which means that, that can be mana produced from any type of basic land, or, any land that produces any kind of color. So basically it's generic mana. So that's kind of how they're wording it now. So certain cards will require you to use a waste land to cast the card, which we'll see a couple of cards in the spoilers ahead that use this new basic land type. So basically, if a card says, let's say it costs 1 and then this symbol right here, so that 1 can be used from any type of land, just like before. But if it has this symbol on it as part of its mana cost, that needs to be paid with a pure colorless basic land like this, like wastes. So that's more or less how I understand that it works. If I'm missing something about it, please don't hesitate to correct me in the comment section below. But that's basically how this new basic land type is going to work in the Oath of the Gatewatch. So with that out of the way, let's start taking a look at some of these cards here. So first up we have, you can't really see it because of the glare on the picture, but we have a legendary core cleric. Her name is Allele, I think, Eternal Pilgrim. She's a 2-cost, 2/3, 1 white and 1 black for a 2/3 with Death Touch, so that's not bad on its own. But what she does is actually really cool. So you can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature. You gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. So it's kind of like a Disciple of Gristlebrand type effect. And then we also have, you can pay 1, a white and a black, sacrifice another creature, exile target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only if you have at least 10 life more than your starting life total. I already want to brew a deck around this card just after I saw it. It's pretty cheap at 2 mana to play. It's got a pretty decent body on it for 2 mana. It's a 2/3. The fact that it has Death Touch means it'll, kill anything in combat. Granted that the creature that it's going to combat with doesn't first strike, but a 2/3 for 2 with Death Touch is not bad on its own, but those 2 abilities are really nice. And the second one there, granted you need to have 10 life more than your starting life total, but with that built-in ability where she allows you to sacrifice creatures and gain life equal to their toughness, that's not going to be a hard stipulation to meet. Plus, you're in black-white, so if you're building a deck around this card, you have plenty of options to gain life. White has, many options to gain life. Black has some, options as well to drain opponents, and then you gain life. So you definitely have a lot of tools at your disposal if you want to build a deck around this card, which I am already interested in doing. And this particular art here, as we can see, is going to be the pre-release art. So we'll probably see another version of this card, at least art-wise, in the actual set. This appears to be the pre-release version of it. Next, the next legendary creature we're going to take a look at, I'm actually going to pull up a web page here because the creature was in another language. So this is it here. It's called Mina and Den Wildborn. So it's a 4-cost, 4/4, 2 and Gruul for a legendary elf ally that allows you to play an additional land during each of your turns, and then you can pay a red and a green and return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. It's definitely not bad. I mean, a 4/4 for 4 mana is good. Being able to play an additional land on each of your turns is actually not a bad thing at all. It's actually really good, especially in Commander, where you want to be getting your lands out as fast as possible. But I don't know, I just feel like this card's a little underwhelming. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, we'll see some pretty, crazy decks built around this in EDH. But, I mean, when I first looked at it, I was kind of underwhelmed when I looked at it. Yeah, I can play an additional land on each of my turns. That's great. The second ability where I can, pay a red and a green and bounce a land to give something trample. I could just play, Archetype of Aggression or, anything. There's other things that could give my team trample. I could play Nyssa, God of the Hunt. She's indestructible and gives my team trample. So, I mean, I just feel like that second ability is a little underwhelming. The first one's really great, being able to play an additional land. I would probably play this card in a red-green deck in the 99 just to be able to get that additional land play every turn. So, I like the card overall. Just, would I make it a general of a deck? Probably not. We're going to bounce back here to these card images. So next up we have Kalitas, Traitor of Get. He's a 4-cost, 3/4 legendary vampire warrior with lifelink, so that's pretty damn good on its own. But if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. That's phenomenal. I would definitely play this guy in the 99 of a deck. I would definitely make this guy a commander for sure. Maybe vampire / zombie tribal. The body on him for 4 mana is great. The fact that he lifelinks is great. The fact that whenever any of your opponent's dudes go to the yard, non-token dudes, they get exiled. That's really great. Shuts down every deck that you're playing against that has a lot of recursion or wants to play with reanimation. It's just all around great. And not only does it exile the card, you get a 2/2 black zombie out of it, and you can pay 2 and a black, sacrifice another vampire or zombie to put 2 +1/+1 counters on him. So not only is he gonna exile your opponent's dudes from the yard, if they would go to the yard, and get you a 2/2 body, you can sacrifice those 2/2 bodies to make this guy bigger. So I really like this card a lot from an EDH standpoint. I really, really do. I'm probably going to put this guy into my Ghoul Caller Jissa deck for sure, seeing as that's basically zombie tribal. This guy would fit right in. And I could definitely see myself building a deck around this guy. Like I said, maybe vampire / zombie tribal, or even just, mono black good stuff. This guy's just all around, really, really good, and I like him a lot. Next up, we have Causal Ex the Great Distortion. So he's, the I guess the big daddy Eldrazi of the set. This card was spoiled, I believe. I want to say it was definitely a few weeks ago, maybe even longer ago. And everybody thought that this was floating around, and people thought that it was fake, that it was photoshopped, it wasn't real. Turns out it is real. So. And this card is a nice example of the new colorless mana symbol that we have here. So Causal Ex the Great Distortion is a 10-cost, 12/12 legendary Eldrazi. So he costs 8 generic mana. So that's 8 mana of any basic land type or any land that produces any kind of color, and 2 colorless mana. So that would have to come from a waste source. But anyways, when you cast Causal Ex the Great Distortion, if you have fewer than 7 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. That's great. So, if you're playing a 10-mana spell, you're probably going to not have many cards in your hand at that point, because you're probably going to be holding on to this for quite some time before you're able to cast it. So, if you have 3 cards in hand, you're going to draw 4, whatever the difference is to make it 7. He also has Menace, so he cannot be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. The only kind of drawback to him is, unlike Ulamog, he's not indestructible, but he kind of does have like a pseudo way to protect himself. So his last ability is discard a card with converted mana cost X, counter target spell with converted mana cost X. So with that card draw that he brings, you could draw into some cards, and then if someone tries to remove him with some sort of, exile effect or kill spell or whatever, if you have a card in your hand that you maybe just drew off of him that has the same mana cost as what they're trying to use to target him, you can discard that card and counter that spell. So if they try to cast, let's say, a dismember, not a dismember, that wouldn't even kill him. A Doomblade, let's say, 2-cost, destroy target non-black creature. Well, he's not black, he's colorless, so a Doomblade would kill him. If you have a 2-cost card in your hand, you can pitch it to the yard to counter that Doomblade. So he does kind of have a built-in way to protect himself. But what I really like about him is the fact that he, can draw you quite a few cards, depending on how many you have in your hand. So he'll draw you cards equal to the difference if you have fewer than 7 in hand. Next up, we have a card that was actually officially revealed from Wizards, Crush of Tentacles. It's a 6-cost blue sorcery, 4 and 2 blue. It has this new ability called Surge, which I don't really care for. It's basically built around, like, if you're playing multiplayer, like Twin-Headed Giant or, things of that nature. So what Surge does is, the Surge cost on this is 3 and 2 blue. It says you may cast the spell for its Surge cost if you or a teammate has cast another spell this turn. Yes, you can cast this for cheaper if you yourself have cast another spell in this turn, but the way it looks like that they've engineered this is to use this, in like a multiplayer format where, maybe you're playing, like I said, Two-Headed Giant or something like that, where you're partnered up with somebody. You can pay it for that cheaper cost. Again, maybe you play like a cheap cantrip spell and then you can lower the cost on this by 1, basically. But overall, Surge doesn't really tickle my fancy. But what the card does is return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If Crush of Tentacles' Surge cost was paid, you put an 8/8 blue octopus creature token onto the board. I mean, that's pretty great. So, not only is it kind of like a pseudo sweeper for blue, if you pay its Surge cost, you get an 8/8 body on the board when, everybody else isn't going to have any non-land stuff on the board to stop that 8/8 unless they recast something to stop it. So, overall, I like the card. I just don't really care for this whole surge cost thing. Alright, next up we have Sphinx of the Final Word. He's a 7 cost, 5/5 Sphinx with flying and hexproof, so that's pretty cool. He cannot be countered, which is also really cool. And instant and sorcery spells you control can't be countered by spells or abilities. This guy's pretty dirty. I could see this guy finding a home in pretty much any EDH deck that's running blue. You basically can't touch this guy. The only way that you're going to get this guy off the board is if you Wrath. Because he's not indestructible, he's just hexproof, so you can't target him with anything. Well, your opponents can't. You, as the player who controls him, can target him with things. But your opponents will never touch this guy, and he can't be countered, and he makes all your instants and sorceries uncounterable. He's a very powerful card. I could definitely see this finding a home in any EDH deck that's got blue. And like I said, the only way that this guy's getting removed off the board is if, maybe he's your only creature and someone, plays like a sacrifice effect on you that forces you to sacrifice a creature. That could get rid of him, or if your opponent wraths the board, that'll get rid of him too. But he's very, very hard to get off the board. And once he's on the board, your instants and sorceries will go unanswered because they are now uncounterable. And I really do like the little flavor text on him here. He answers questions as readily as he asks them, but his answer is always no. So I really like this card a lot. Definitely seeing it. Definitely see it finding a home in any blue deck. Next we have Causal Ex Return. It's a 3 cost instant with Devoid, so it has no color even though it costs a red mana to cast. And Causal Ex Return deals 2 damage to each creature. That's okay. It's a little bit more expensive Pyroclasm, but at instant speed. But then this also has, whenever you cast an Eldrazi creature spell will convert a mana cost 7 or greater, you may exile this from your graveyard. If you do, Causal Ex Return deals 5 damage to each creature. From an EDH standpoint, I don't particularly care for the card. 2 damage will kill off, like a bunch of tokens and stuff like that. But the fact that to get that, second trigger, you have to cast a specific type of card with a specific mana cost, for me, just kind of makes it not really that playable in Commander. I mean, unless you're playing like an Eldrazi tribal deck or something like that. But, at the very best, I would say in Commander, this is just an instant speed Pyroclasm, which isn't bad. But, I feel like there's probably better cards you could play. Yeah, they probably won't be at instant speed, but I just feel like there's better cards that you could play in EDH than this card. Maybe the fact that it has Devoid, tickles some people's fancy because it has no color. Maybe it gets around, creatures with protection from a color. But overall, it's from an EDH standpoint, for me, it's a little underwhelming. Maybe maybe it'll see standard play, maybe it'll see, play in other formats, but in Commander, I don't really care for it. Next we have World Breaker. It's a 7 cost, 5/7 Eldrazi with Devoid, costs 6 and a green. When you cast World Breaker, exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. So it's basically a bigger, beefier acidic slime, but instead of destroying it, it exiles the card. So that's pretty nice. It does have reach, so it can block flyers. And it also has pay 2 and a colorless. So we get that, that specific colorless mana symbol again. Pay 2 and a colorless. Sacrifice a land, return World Breaker from your graveyard to your hand. So overall, I like the card. It's a little expensive at 7, just to be able to exile an artifact, enchantment, or land. Not that that's a bad thing by any means. That's definitely a really good ability. Just at 7 mana, I feel like I would, be inclined to play, Acidic Slime over this. Yeah, it only costs 2 more mana and you get a much bigger body, but it's not bad. The 5/7 body with reach, like I said, it can block flyers. Generally in Commander, I personally don't want to sacrifice lands away unless I'm playing like my Titania deck that wants lands to go to the graveyard. So, the fact that he can recur himself is not bad, but, at 7 mana, I just feel like there's probably, cheaper, more efficient cards that you could play over this guy. But, overall, I like the card. Exiling an artifact, enchantment, or land isn't a bad thing, but I feel like, there's probably other cards you could play that are much cheaper that will give you a similar effect. Maybe not exile, but, a similar effect, maybe destroying it or something like that. Next up, we have the first Planeswalker of the set, Chandra Flamecaller. She's a 6-cost Planeswalker, comes in with 4 loyalty. Her first ability is +1, put 2 3/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. That's pretty sweet. The fact that they get exiled is okay, because, maybe your opponent has an empty board, and you just simply +1 this and get 6 power on the board that can swing right away. It's definitely not bad. Her second ability, though, is probably what I would be most excited about, and what, Nekyasar players will probably, crap their pants over a little bit. Discard all cards in your hand, then draw that many cards +1. So, Nekyasar players, there's another tool to wreak havoc. That's a really powerful ability. And the fact that it's, you don't gain any loyalty, but you also don't lose any loyalty for activating it. So that's really good. It's a really powerful ability. And the fact that you draw cards equal to the number that you discarded +1 is really nice. And then her last ability is -X. She deals X damage to each creature. So that's also pretty relevant in Commander too. If you get her up to, let's say 7 or 8 counters, and you, -6 to deal 6 damage to each creature, that's probably going to wipe the board. So, token production, card draw, and potential board wipe, on a red card, it's pretty sweet. I like it. I like it a lot. Next, we have the other Planeswalker that we've seen from the set, Nyssa, Voice of Zendikar. She's a 3-cost green Planeswalker, where it comes in with 3 loyalty. You can +1 to put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield. That's whatever, create a chump blocker. Then you can -2 to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, so that's pretty nice. And then her -7 is you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is the number of lands you control. That's probably the most potent ability, I would say, at least from a Commander standpoint. So, if you have 8 lands down and you activate that, you're going to gain 8 life and draw 8 cards. So definitely not a bad ability by any means. It's actually really, really good. The other 2, modes that she has aren't bad. They're just not, super, super awesome. I feel like on Chandra, all 3 of those abilities are really, really good. Nyssa's +1 is similar, but you only get like a chump blocker. It can attack, but it's not going to do any damage. But you can generate little chump blockers, and then you can make your team bigger. So I guess that's decently relevant. Making all your guys bigger by -2ing her. But what I like the most about her is the -7 and gaining life and drawing cards. So that's Nyssa. Next up, we have Mirror Pool. It's a new land from the set, It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool. So again, we see that colorless mana symbol like we've seen on the Waste basic land. Then this has 2 abilities. You can pay 2 generic mana and a colorless mana, tap it, and sacrifice Mirror Pool, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Then you can pay 4 generic mana and a colorless, tap it, and sacrifice it. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature you control. I like the putting a token onto the battlefield. I mean, I also like copying an instant or sorcery spell, but unless you have a way to get this land back out of the yard, back to your hand, it's kind of like a one and done. So me personally, I don't see it, seeing a whole ton of play in Commander. I mean, I could definitely see it being played. Maybe you have some sort of dredge strategy or, a way to, get your lands back from your graveyard to your hand. Maybe you're playing, a deck with like Crucible of Worlds or something like that. Maybe you're playing Life from the Loam. There are cards that'll let you take your lands back from the graveyard. I mean, Eternal Witness, Green Warden, or Marasa. I mean, there's ways to get this back from the yard. But just the fact that you have to sacrifice it away just to get one of those 2 effects, I mean, it's definitely not a bad card by any means. Those effects are really nice. Just it's kind of like a one and done for me. So would I play it? Maybe. I don't, look at this card and get super excited about it. But that's just my opinion. Then, next we have the Expedition lands that were spoiled. So we got some pretty cool stuff to look at here. So first up we have Ancient Tomb. So this will tap to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool, and it deals 2 damage to you. The last time that we saw this card, I want to say, was from like Tempest or something, or some old set like that. I'm actually going to look it up real quick because now I'm curious as to what set it originally was printed in, because this card, yes, Tempest. It was reprinted in From the Vault Realms, and yeah, I think that's about it. So this is a very popular EDH card. So I really feel like seeing the expeditions that were spoiled, I feel like they were almost like hand-tailored for EDH players. Like, I really do feel that way. There's some really nice expeditions in this set. So let's look at the next one. We have Forbidden Orchard. Taps to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and then when you tap it for mana, target opponent puts a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token onto the board. Yeah, that's whatever. I'll give my opponent a vanilla 1/1 creature that doesn't fly or anything to add 1 mana of any color to my mana pool. So that's pretty nice. Next we have Dust Bowl. I believe the last time we saw this card was like Mercadian Masks. So this card, seeing this reprinted as an expedition is really nice. So it taps to add a colorless, or you can pay 3 and tap it and sacrifice a land to destroy target non-basic land. So I believe that card, or Dust Bowl, is like a $5, $6, maybe $7 card. So seeing this reprinted as an expedition is really cool. Next we have Tech Edge. Taps to add a colorless to your mana pool, or you can pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice it, destroy target non-basic land, activate this ability only if an opponent controls 4 or more lands. Last time we saw this, I believe, was Worldwake. So at the time it was an uncommon, and it's like a $3 or $4 uncommon, I believe. So the fact that they reprinted it as an expedition is cool. I like it. But I feel like this slot, probably could have been something much cooler instead of Tectonic Edge. But, it's cool nonetheless that they are reprinting it as an expedition. Next we have Strip Mine. Tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, or tap it and sacrifice it to destroy target land. So that's really nice. There's heavy emphasis on cards, or these expeditions that destroy non-basic lands. But, again, in Commander, you'll definitely see a lot of people playing lands like this, Strip Mine, Tectonic Edge, et cetera, et cetera. To get rid of those pesky utility lands that people play that are, doing things that you don't like. So, another very welcome reprint as an expedition. Next we have Eye of Ujin. Colorless Eldrazi spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and you can pay 7 and tap it. Search your library for a colorless creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. I want to say the last time we saw this was in, I want to say it was World Wake or Zendikar. Pretty popular card. Lets you tutor up colorless creatures and put them into your hand. And then, obviously if you're playing a lot of Eldrazi, it's definitely a card that you probably want to be playing in your deck. The fact that it doesn't tap for any, type of mana, for me is a little bit of a drawback. I probably wouldn't play this in a deck unless I was building around it. Well, maybe not building around this card per se, but, if I was building an Eldrazi deck, or if I was building a straight colorless deck with a colorless general, maybe I'd play this because it would allow me to tutor up basically any creature in my deck. But overall, Eye of Ujin for me is a little underwhelming. I'm sure for a lot of people. A lot of people may be excited about it, but me personally, this is probably one of the expeditions I don't really care for. Next up we have Core Haven. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 1 and a white and tap it and prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by target attacking creature this turn. It's a very nice reprint there as an expedition. So it's kind of like a weaker, Maze of Ith, or like Mystifying Maze or something like that. But it's definitely a really nice card. And the fact that they, I really like the art on these expeditions as well. I think they're really amazing. I know that the image quality is kind of crappy because these were probably, snapped pictures from maybe like a digital camera or cell phone or something like that, or maybe someone took a printing sheet, from from Wizards, got their hands on it somehow and scanned it on a scanner. So, you will have to excuse the crappy image quality, but that's, just is what it is. That's, the card images that are, out there on the internet right now. But, Core Haven gets my thumbs up. I like it. Then we have Mana Confluence. I believe it was from the Theros block, one of those sets. Anyway, you can tap it, pay a life, and add a mana of any color to your mana pool. So that's pretty cool. And then we have Horizon Canopy. Last time we saw this, I believe, was in Future Sight. Maybe Planar Chaos. I want to say Future Sight. But we can tap it and pay a life to add a green or a white to our mana pool. Then we can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it to draw a card. Pretty cool. And then we have the return of the Filter Lands. So the Filter Lands were from Eventide, I believe, or somewhere in that Lorwyn block. I know a lot of them were from Eventide. Some of the other ones may have been from one of the other sets. But these are, Mystic Gate. Let me just look it up real quick here. I want to say goes for a pretty penny. $16, according to TCG Player Mid right now. So, they're relatively expensive. So we have all of them. We have Mystic Gate, Sunken Ruins, Graven Cairns, Firelit Thicket, Wooded Bastion, Rugged Prairie, Fetid Heath, Cascade Bluffs, and Twilight Mire. And then we have the expedition that I feel like is going to be the most sought after and probably the most expensive, Wasteland. So the last time that we've seen Wasteland, I want to say was from the Tempest block as well. Let's just check real quick. But This card, yes, the only one and only time this card was printed was also from the Tempest block, just like Ancient Tomb. And a Wasteland currently, according to TCG Player Mid, is $65. So the fact that they're making an Expedition Wasteland, I could definitely see this costing either close to or well over $100. The Wasteland by itself from Tempest is $65. So the fact that they're finally reprinting this is really, really nice and really cool. Yeah, it's an Expedition. Chances of you pulling one in a pack are slim, but the fact that they're reprinting the card is really, really nice, and I bet a lot of people will probably pay, especially Commander players, because this is a pretty heavily played card in Commander. If you can get your hands on the card. But I definitely see this being the most sought-after Expedition, and probably, most definitely, the most expensive one out of all the Expeditions that we've seen. So that about wraps it up, guys, for these Oath of the Gatewatch spoilers. So hope you enjoyed it. Leave me some comments in the comment section below the video, what you think of the cards. I know we're kind of a little late to the party with the spoilers on these. They've been available for a few days now, but we still wanted to do a video on it and talk about the cards and get you guys' input on it. So, again, let me know what you think in the comment section below of the Expeditions and, some of these Mythics and the Planeswalkers and all that. I'm pretty excited for Oath of the Gatewatch. I definitely want to get my hands on some of those Expedition lands. So, hopefully Derek and I will get lucky when we get our booster boxes. So we'll see. So again, I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll catch you later. Thanks a lot for watching.